Yeah.
All right, everyone. Welcome to the Real Estate Game Changers Show. I'm your host, Mike McKay, based in Jacksonville, Florida, and we do this podcast each and every week. This is the first type of episode that we're doing for the new format where once a month, me and my wife, Luisa, who runs the business with me, will come on and talk about what we're doing in the business. So, Luisa, welcome to the show.
Thanks.
All right, so we wrote down a couple things that are going on in our business that we wanted to share with everyone. So Luisa, why don't you start out with talking about the playbook you're building to help people on our team find their superpower?
Okay. So I'll start with where it came up from.
Mm-hmm.
So for those of you who don't know me, and my trajectory in the company, in 2023, I was doing sales, and it came to a point where I wasn't the happiest person doing sales as much as I can do it and I learned how to do it. It gave me almost no fulfillment. And so it came to a point where I was making calls and I would actually cry over it. And I had this conversation with my friend Elisa back then, and she said to me, well, Luisa, the fact that you're good at something or that you can do something doesn't mean that you should be doing it. And that really got my mind going. At the time, I also started reading a book about, my abilities and finding what my abilities were, which in my case, I'm thinking are my superpowers. So then really what we started doing was, once I found my superpowers, we started building my role around me. And shortly after, I think we realized that finding each of our team members' superpower and building their role around them would really allow them to excel and 10x or more themselves in a way that they would be very happy doing what they're doing, and they would also feel very excited. So we tried doing it in several calls, right? Some of our team members are virtual. So we were doing several calls, trying to teach them how to find their superpowers. But ultimately what I realized was that I needed a workbook or a playbook where I could teach people, okay, this is what you do, sit down, really be comfortable with yourself, be honest with yourself, and write down, what you're doing right now, how you're feeling doing those things, and then actually find your superpowers. And with the concept of superpowers, I've also developed the idea of finding your kryptonite, which in your case, not familiar with Superman, but maybe the thing that takes your powers away. And helping people have awareness about that and really focus on what gives them the superpowers and what makes them happy. Because I think if they're doing what makes them happy and gives them fulfillment, it's like success every day, and you feel excited and fulfilled. So that is something that I'm working on right now. It's something that I hope to have done in the next 2 weeks, and I think it's gonna impact all of our company.
Yeah. Well, I think also we've seen it from people we've hired, right?
Yeah.
We hired Kiki, who runs all of our construction. We hired her back in, what was it, October of last year. And project management and construction is a unique ability.
Yes.
And when the day she started, within a couple days, there were so many things that she changed and improved in our construction process that we had never even thought about.
Right.
And to us, especially to me, even though I like a lot of the people who we work with on the construction side, going and doing the construction project management was really a drag. Right. But Kiki is really excited about doing it every day, and because of that, she's always excited to figure out like what's the best way to improve it. Like how can she get better at it? How can we get our costs down? How can we make our renovations look better, make them not look like every other flip on the market, right? Which when I was running the flips, that's kind of what they looked like. I mean, they look good because we had good guys doing them, but they look like every other flip because my answer was when they said, "What do you want to do with the house?" I said, "Just do the house." Right. So, I mean, there's probably some other examples. I mean, what are some other examples of finding people's superpowers and?
I think one of the examples that I actually have from today is today I had my alignment meeting with one of our team members. She's running transactions for us, and she told me during our alignment meeting session, she said, "Hey, Louisa, there's something that I really want to share with you that I think would make you very happy." And I said, "Hit me. I want to hear it." Mm-hmm. And she said, I was speaking with my husband and I was telling him, on Sunday, tomorrow is Monday. And he was like, "Oh, yeah, it's Monday. You look excited though." And so she said, the important thing about the story is that other Mondays were not as exciting. So she mentioned to me, I've worked in multiple places, but Mondays felt a bit like a drag. And she was like, I like working, feeling productive, etc. But I had never felt very excited about a Monday. And so she said, and working here with you guys, I feel extremely excited for Mondays, like grateful for Mondays, because I get to come back to do what I like to do. And I feel fulfilled, right? And happy. And so I think that hiring people who have superpower for sales, for organizing, for managing, for marketing, for designing, just allows us to let them run it and like feel confident about them running it, because they do it even better than whatever we could do, and it would take us a ton of time to learn what they already know. So I think that that's a perfect example of hiring people that are working using their superpowers.
Yeah.
Just like that happiness that they get.
So I think like if people want to reach out to Louisa in a couple of weeks, I'm sure she'd be happy to share the playbook with you guys. But to give people kind of a sneak peek, if they wanted to start figuring out what their superpower is, what's one exercise they could go and do that would help them get closer to
it? Definitely like sitting down and writing two things. So the first thing is writing during your day, what activities do you do that you lose track of time doing? So, maybe you do 10 activities, and out of those 10, you get in a flow state and lose some track of time in 2 or 3, right? So that's a good indication of what your superpowers is, like what the base is. And then the second one is, once you've done that, you go ahead and think back to your childhood. And so what you want to think about is, what were kind of like the games that you used to play, what were the things that you used to do that you would absolutely lose track of time on? And what comes to my mind right now is, if any of you are familiar, I know you won't be, but if any of you are familiar with Avatar, Nickelodeon show, Aang, and so, the way that they figure out that he's the Avatar is because he plays with the toys of the 4 elements, which is water, air, earth, and fire. And so the way they develop their superpowers is by the toy that they decide to play with. And so that kicks it back to, what did you play with when you were a child? because I'm sure you would lose track of time doing it.
Mm-hmm.
For example, one of mine was jigsaw puzzles. So I would actually, very boring for a lot of kids. It was extremely entertaining for me. Even now, I could just sit down and do a puzzle for like hours and be the happiest person. So, second exercise is, yeah, looking back, writing down what were those games or things that you used to do and lose track of time on.
Okay. So once they have those two things, what should they do next?
What should they do next? Well, what you want to do next is think about within what is kind of, you're going to see like a mirror, like something that's similar. So you're going to see, okay, within the activities that I enjoy doing from the 10 activities that I do a day, this is the thing that they have in common with the games that I used to play as a child. And so you're going to be able to see, okay, this activity, this is what I really enjoy about it, right? For example, one of our team members, I say it as a joke, but she's like so organized, but I'm like, oh, you're super OCD, on like emails and like, just having everything so organized. And that is her favorite part. And like when she was a child, her favorite games were around selecting things, grouping things, right? Anything that had to do with like separating things and having clarity on groups. And that's something that you see reflected in the activities that she likes to do.
Yeah.
So.
And it's interesting that you bring that up, right? Because you were saying you want for people to avoid what's their kryptonite, right? And for me, organizing emails and going through emails is my kryptonite, right? Yes. So it's something that is like one of her superpowers.
Yes.
And it's something I very much just like to do and will take all the energy out of me. So the way that we have it set up is that she actually manages my inbox.
Right.
And she just pushes the 3 to 5 most important emails that I need to answer that day to me. We use a tool called Missive. So the emails can come into like a team inbox. Someone can, assign them to the person they were sent to, or can assign them to other people in the company. So a lot of times emails will come to me, even though someone else is better suited to handle them, and she'll just assign them to other people in the company. I never even see those emails. I just handle like 3 to 5 a day that are actually really important.
Which makes you more efficient.
Yeah, way more efficient.
And keeps your energy levels.
Yeah. All right. Let's jump to something else. So let's talk about the event that we're going to be hosting.
Okay. Do you want to kick us off?
Oh, that's your thing.
Okay. So in May, we're going to be hosting...
Is it May or March?
May.
Oh, it's May.
Yeah.
Okay.
So in May 8th, we're going to be hosting an event. I think we're going to be doing 2 of these a year. At least that's the plan for now. And so, I want to say that the event comes from something that we wanted to do for a while, but it also comes from the people that we've recently hired, where like they reflect our core values, but they've also made us notice maybe like areas of opportunity for us, where like one of our team members, Kiki, actually said to us once, hey, you guys are so amazing. I see you guys interview people, like, talk to people, but you never talk to people about how amazing the company really is. And how amazing you guys are interacting with team members and coaching them and, leading them to be better versions of themselves and be happier. And she's extremely sociable. And so one of the things that she said was like, well, I don't see a space right now where anyone is actually sharing this value. Something that you guys are sharing with all of our team members. You're helping people do better. You're contacting contractors. She's contacting contractors. vendors, just creating basically a network. And she's like, but there's so much more that you can share. And so, kind of what we thought about was hosting an event where we actually share that with the community, not only of real estate investors, but just like people that have anything to do with real estate, vendors, contractors, and having them like really get to know us and having like a space for networking and a space where they feel welcomed. Where we're not only talking to real estate investors, but we're really talking to people that impact real estate in any way, shape, or form.
Do you want to talk more about what's going to happen at the event?
Sure. So when you walk in to the event, we are going to have a photo booth, actually, and we're going to have a networking space for about 30 minutes, 30 to 40 minutes. Then after that, we're going to have a speaker. And Mike is probably going to be talking about some type of, haven't decided on the theme, but some type of interactive exercise where people can actually get something done and take it with them and implement it to either their business or their day-to-day life. And after Mike speaking and just having this interactive session, then we can go back to networking. There is a time where you have a name for this.
I call it the community ask.
The community ask. Maybe you can explain that better.
I used to run a large meetup in New York City. It was like 50 to about 150 people per an event, about when I was in the short-term rental business. And part of the format I did for every event was there was a community ask section after the speaker. So what I realize is that people often come to an event looking for an answer for something or looking to meet someone. So what the community ask section does is about 10 minutes after, anyone has the opportunity to stand up and talk for about 30 seconds, and they can either say something they do, they can say a problem they're running into, or they can say someone they're looking to meet. And I found by doing that in an event, a lot of times when an event wraps up, a lot of people just leave because they don't know who to talk to afterwards. But if you've had that section at the event, what I found at the events that I ran in New York City is that as someone would ask a question or say they wanted to meet someone, there was usually someone else in the room that had the answer to that question, was the person they wanted to meet, or knew someone that they wanted to meet. So as soon as that part of the event ended, instead of people kind of just networking a little bit and going their own way, they really like, oh, I'm going to talk to that person because they said they were looking for this, or they had a question on that, or they wanted to meet this type of person. So that's going to be something that we're going to intertwine into the event too. I also think that something, it's very simple. The other thing we're going to do that Key and I were talking about, but I think it's kind of unique, is a lot of times you go to an event, you get a name tag, right? So people know each other's names. On the name tag, sometimes people write what they do. And we're going to flip that around, and it's not going to be what I do on the name tag, it's who I want to meet. Because that's a really easy way. Some people might go to an event and they're like, well, I want to do some flips, or I want to meet some wholesalers, but they don't know, if they haven't been to the event before, who in the room is a wholesaler. And if they just write on their tag, I'm a flipper, maybe some people who are wholesalers might approach them, but if they say they're looking for wholesalers and a wholesaler walks by and sees that they're looking for wholesalers, it'd be kind of silly for the wholesaler not to say, hey, I'm a wholesaler and you're looking for a wholesaler, like, let's talk, right? So it sounds like a really small tweak. But for people who kind of don't know, my background is, until I was about 25 years old, I was in the nightclub business in New York City for years. And I saw the way that you can put together an event that just you change a few small things and it changes the energy in the room and changes the way people interact with each other. And that can be like something negative, or that can be something positive, right? Like a lot of times when I would put on an event, like I don't want there to be, when you come in the networking section, I try not to have chairs for people to sit down on, because then people just go off on their own or
Get attached.
Sit down, right? We want people to talk. Or your job as the host is when someone comes into an event is to try to introduce them to someone within the first few minutes of them being there. Because once they're in a group and the conversation's going, they're in the flow, right? Not everyone's going to go up to random people and approach them, but if you can at least get them talking to the first person who's going to bring them some value, then they're going to say that your event really brought a lot of value to them, and you're going to get more value out of the event. So there'll be more coming out on this. We'll be putting out some marketing around the event, but it's something that I'm pretty excited for. I think it's going to be something different than has been seen in Jacksonville before.
Yeah, so. I'm super excited about it.
What should we talk about next?
Sales.
Sales. Favorite topic of mine. Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll start off with first about one thing that I think we've made a huge improvement on in the last 6 months is just the speed at which we onboard salespeople. And I think it was about a year and a couple months ago when we had Jonathan on the podcast, and he said something that really stuck with me. He said, no one works harder when they have the job than when they want the job. So if you can get them trained or in the period where they want the job, that's where they're going to put the most effort in.
Right.
So we do our third round interview is we send them home with a script if we like them after the second round interview and some call recordings, and we tell them to study it and, come in, they're going to have to sell to us. Right. And, see how they handle it. I don't expect it to be perfect, but most people, when they've come in, they've told us, and I believe them because of the way that they perform in that interview, that they have spent 3 to 4 hours reading over that script and listening to the call recordings I sent them. So on day one, they're already going to be ahead of the game because they already know our league qualification script. But some other things that I started to realize, and that was something I got from Jonathan, was he calls it the performance interview. But we took it a step further after that, which is we realized on the performance interview that, and this was with a recent hire we just hired someone that had no sales experience, but frankly, I think he's going to be amazing. He's a natural. And we've got the training in place to get him there super fast. But we realized that because he hadn't been in sales before, there was a couple parts where, he was going to, if he didn't prep for it ahead of time, he was going to start day one too far behind everyone else. So based on what we're doing now is based on that performance interview, obviously they have to pass it and do well enough for us to want to hire them, but no one's going to be perfect.
I think I want to interject right there.
What?
I think that what we've been doing also is throughout the whole interview process for sales, what we're looking for most is, and asking ourselves, is sales their superpower?
That's true.
Regardless of their background.
Yeah.
So by interview 3, is it their superpower? And if we say yes, then we take it to this other step.
Sure. Yeah. That's a requirement. Yeah. So if we notice something in that performance interview that we think that we want them to work more on before day one, is when I make them the offer for the job, now I'm telling them, hey, I think you're going to be great at this job. I'm willing to move forward with you under these conditions. And the conditions are that I'm going to give them some homework that they have to do before day one. It could be like 3 to 5 hours of work, maybe a little bit more. It might, and that homework depends on where I see that they might struggle the most. So I want them to get ahead on that area. So if I see that they might struggle on how to dive into pain with prospects, I'm going to send them some videos of some sales trainings I've done, how to dive into pain. I'm going to give them maybe a book to read, like a Sandler book to read, like you can't teach a kid how to ride a bike at a seminar. And maybe I'm going to give them some call recordings as well that are specifically focused on pain. And we've done that, and that allows people when they come in on day one that is no longer a weakness for them anymore. It's actually one of their strengths. So that's allowed us to really onboard sales reps super quick. Another thing that we did there is before we brought on our last batch of sales reps is I took a Saturday and I just sat there on the dialer and I just called prospects for like 4 hours, and I took a video of myself and recorded the audio. And I told our sales operations assistant, I said, I don't want to send people this 4-hour thing of me, because a lot of times they're going to hear just the phone ringing a bunch of times when people aren't picking up and it's too much to digest. But what I was doing is, as I was doing the video, is I would talk to a prospect, and then while I was waiting for the next prospect to answer, I was talking about that call, what I did well, what I could have done better, why I did what I did on that call. And Alejandra, who's our sales operations assistant, took that and cut that down, I think it's about an hour and a half of videos, and they're in sections based on our sales process. And then there's some quiz questions along the way that sales reps have to take. So they have to go through that course, which is in Trainual, which is the training software that we use, before they start on day one. They come in on day one and haven't done it, well, they're not starting day one. They're going home.
Yeah.
So I think that's made a really big difference for us.
I think that was a great win. Yeah. Like a great use of your time. Where Mike not only recorded the call, I think it's important to say that you recorded yourself.
Sure, on video. On
video.
Yeah.
And so as he was calling, he was recording himself on video, and he was also recording his screen. So it was like a double win. First win, sales reps learn how to modify their voice and like
use their body language to change their voice. Yeah.
Even though it's only on the phone, that body language, they understand now that their body language will impact their calls because they're able to see you do it, right? And then you're explaining your whole thought process on why it's a lead or not or whatever. And then you're taking them through the whole process in the CRM. And then in Trainual, this is chunked down, like it's by pieces, right? But I just think it was like a double win because it's a whole training system with you just doing what you would naturally do if you were doing sales.
Yeah.
So I think that's a big win.
Yeah. And I think that's another example of people using their superpowers, right? Like there's zero chance I was going to sit there and cut up those videos. No chance. Like zero. But Alejandra enjoys doing that. And she was able to put it also in a format that was easy for people to understand because she knows our sales process because she listens to all of our sales reps' calls.
And I think that to take it even further, Alejandra created the where to cut it, what's important, what's not important, and that we had Mariana, who helps us cut our social media stuff, and she went in, cut the videos, put the subtitles, because sometimes it's important, also to think about how people learn. So people can be auditory, but maybe they're not, and you want to let them read the subtitles, right? Unconsciously, it's going to help them. And then she created this whole format that looks really nice. It's not just like the blunt video. And then kicked it back to Alejandra. Then Alejandra posted it on Trainual.
Yeah.
In a system.
Yeah.
So I think that shows also and this is something that we've been better and better at doing with time, which is understanding that the best way, at least for us and how we built our business, to accomplish something is to have the different parts with the different superpowers complete their side and then get a final product. And that really, I think, makes us have so much traction in our business and anything that we're doing.
Yeah. And I think the last part that we do that we haven't mentioned yet is we have our sales reps. I give them a study guide. They have access to a practice test. But on day one, they take a test that's going to determine their commission for the first quarter. It's not hard. There's no trick questions, right? But I don't want to spend the time on day one teaching people what an after repair value is, what a payoff is, what our lead qualification criteria is, what counties we buy in, what don't we buy,
Mm-hmm.
all of that stuff, they should come in having an understanding of on day one. So what I tell them is, you'll come in on day one. First thing you're going to do here is take a test. If you get 90% or higher, you're going to get our highest commission for the first quarter you're here. If you get 80% or higher, you're going to get 1% less on each of the commissions. And if you get less than that, I'm just going to ask you to leave.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's been a great thing, because I don't have to teach people the super basic things,
Mm-hmm.
that they should have an understanding of going in to day one.
I think also there was something that you changed recently, something small, very powerful,
Mm-hmm.
that you learned from Jonathan in one of his CG speeches that maybe we were having trouble with before.
Oh, the drop dead date?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, we implemented something called a drop dead date with salespeople. So we set up basically within 30 days. I guess let me take it back to the problem. The problem is when I hire someone, I basically fall in love with them, right? I see all the potential that they can have, especially a salesperson, especially someone who's a naturally talented salesperson.
Mm-hmm.
I see how that if they put in the work, how they can make 250, 300 grand a year easily.
Understanding that we're providing
all the leads,
yeah. A ton of coaching,
yeah,
like all the system that they need to be successful.
But I started to realize, like, sometimes, like, I think I might have said this in my solo episode 2 weeks ago, is like, I can't want success for them more than they want success for themselves. And it's kind of hard to, I catch myself sometimes putting a lot of effort into people, but maybe they're not putting in that same effort in return. So I was like, how do I hold myself accountable?
Right.
Because sometimes once you've worked a lot with someone, you're bought more into them, right? Because like, I put all this effort in, like they're almost there. Like
you almost have like a resistance to let go.
Yeah, because you've put 40 hours of your effort into them. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So what we decided to do is we put a drop dead metric in place, which is 30 days into working with us, sales reps have to have $10,000, what I call booked commission. I mean, we're in the home buying, flipping business, right? So they're not, even if they get a deal on day one, that money probably won't convert, till a couple months later. But they need to basically, the deals they've put in contract need to project that they're going to make at least $10,000 for their first month within 30 days of starting. It's a pretty easy metric. I mean, our average sales rep's commission per deal is $4,200, mm-hmm. and that's on like a kind of a skinny deal. So, it passes the criteria, but you only have to do really 2 good deals or 3 just deals in order to hit that metric, which I think with the amount of leads we give people and the training, if they put the effort in and they have the natural talent, it's pretty easy.
Right. I think that one important thing to mention there is also what you said of like, yes, implementing this, but how are you communicating this with people that we're onboarding?
Yeah.
So setting the expectation, and I think that you and I have talked about this a lot before, just saying like, hey, I fall in love with everyone that I hire.
Yeah.
Is so important.
Yeah.
It's important to say it to them because it's true.
Yeah.
I also think it's so important to say it to ourselves because I don't hire salespeople, right? My team is composed of different types of roles. But if I look back to the past, I've also found myself unwilling to let go of someone because I see so much potential in them, because we've put a lot of work into, helping them grow, and it just feels like hard, and it doesn't have to be. Right. And I find myself in those moments reminding myself of probably when they leave, they're going to be so much happier. And I've found that recently, right? I found that every time we've either let go of someone has grown so much that they're like, hey, we had this a couple months back, right? Where, hey, I found my superpower. Thank you. I realized this doesn't make me happy. And I was like sad but happy.
Yeah.
Very happy to see someone find what they're naturally good at, their talents, and just move to a place where they were like, I'm so much happier, right? But taking that decision of letting go is sometimes where you need to remind yourself of, I see all this potential. I do fall in love with people that I hire, but we're like here for a reason. And then reminding yourself that this decision is going to probably be best for both.
Yeah. Well, I think that person you mentioned actually texted me about a month ago and said they were so happy for everything they learned here.
Yeah.
They were doing really well.
Yeah.
That's what they decided to pursue, which was cool to hear.
Yeah.
I do. Yeah. What Luisa said is like, but really having that conversation directly with the person when you hire them, like those are the words I say to them. I tell them that I have that metric in place. They have to know about that metric. It's only fair to them.
Yes.
And I tell them the reason I have that is because I need to hold myself accountable because I fall in love with everyone I hire. And no matter how much I like you, if we get to day 30 and you haven't earned $10,000 in commission, it doesn't matter how much I like you, we're going to have to part ways. So it's a good way to keep myself accountable there.
Someone else just popped into my mind. Someone that worked with us a long while ago. And, at the time, we just thought, we went through the same path where it took us a long while to actually let go of them. And this person has reached out to you and I multiple times saying like, hey, how are you guys doing? I just wanted to, reach out and say, I'm doing great. I'm happy for you guys. You guys look like you're growing so much. I feel really proud of you. I'm grateful for like crossing paths with you. And, whatever they're doing, they're so much happier doing right now. So I think that there is like a huge impact in setting that expectation of we fall in love with everyone we hire, and this is what we're keeping ourselves accountable to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. Let's see, what should we talk about next? Want to talk about the Notion stuff that you've done? I think it's pretty incredible.
Sure. So, about a year ago, I came across Notion, and at the time we were in ClickUp, and we tracked basically tasks in ClickUp, and I came across Notion and just saw like this very powerful system. At the time, didn't really know how it would work out. We eventually transitioned and have slowly grown our systems there. We now hold our deal board, which you initially started.
Yeah.
What did you want to build in the deal board initially?
I just wanted a way to track what transactions were in which stage and just have a way to chat underneath each deal so that we didn't just have this long string of like Slack messages and you couldn't find the history behind each deal and what had happened and the files, right? There was files in Google Drive, talking in Slack or Google Chat, right? There was no history
and
of things. And email threads, which obviously you guys heard earlier, I don't really do email. So that obviously wasn't getting checked that much. So that's what it started out as, just a way to keep all communication in one place.
Right. And still at that point, it was like Mike really went ahead and did like the base programming.
Well, I hired someone. I found someone who, whose superpower was Notion.
And building it, yeah.
And when he told me, I reached out to this guy. I found him on Upwork. If anyone wants his contact info, I'm happy to share it with you. I sent him what I wanted, and I was like, how long will this take you? And I was expecting him to say 20 hours. And he said, oh, I'll be done with it in under 5 hours. And he was done with it in under 5 hours. It's incredible.
Yeah.
It would have taken me a month. So.
And this is version 1.
Yeah.
And so I want to still, before continuing with the story, say that it's important to say that I believe that Mike's superpower is actually thinking about these systems. Mm-hmm. So even though he didn't build the system within Notion, you really thought about what should be moving where. Mm-hmm. And really think about how the system could be scaled. Because I think, well, that's not something that is within my superpowers, you know? So once Mike had this built, we kind of slowly started adding more and more features as we noticed that we needed them. And so about, I think like 3 weeks ago, a month.
Well, let's talk about some of the problems we solved with it, because I think that's what people would be interested in. What problems did we solve?
What problems did we solve?
We solved the death by repair request problem recently. If anyone here flips a lot of properties, you know, you get a list of repair requests from buyer's agent. Obviously, you don't want to. It's usually not reasonable for you to do all of them. They'll send you, you know, however. We've actually gotten really good at shrinking the amount of repair requests by kind of, you know, figuring out, getting better over time, like what needs to be done. But sometimes you just get someone who gets an inspection report and wants every single tiny thing done. And it was a huge pain because you'd have to get this inspection report, you'd have to get your repair request list, which usually isn't in the most organized format. And you'd have to get your inspection report, and you'd literally have to go through them and see what they actually meant by what they wrote in the repair request and how that correlates with the inspection report. Because the last thing you want to do is agree to something, send the contractor to fix it, and you go back and they're like, well, that's not the item I was talking about in the repair request, right? So it's a lot of back and forth. You know, there's some items that, you know, if the buyer is using lending, like it doesn't, like there's no option. Like you're going to have to do some of those items, like if a water heater is a certain age or things like that. So I don't like admin detail work, so that wasn't really working for me. I also don't have the insight of what everything should cost. So maybe I'm willing to do up to X amount of dollars of repairs for the buyer, but I'm not willing to do, maybe I'm willing to do 2,000, but not willing to do 10,000. Right. So what we developed is now when our realtor submits a repair request, they submit the file with the inspection report, but then they also put all the line items into Notion. So it'll say replace hot water heater, repaint ceiling, change fixture in the bathroom, whatever the inspection, whatever the repair request says. And then we have our agent ask the buyer's agent, what is the priority list of these items for your buyer? What do they really want done, and what like would just be like a nice to have for them? So our agent goes in and puts what's an insurance requirement. So what are we gonna have to do no matter what? Insurance or lender requirement. And then it's like what's like a must have for the buyer, and then what's kind of, I forget the wording we use, but it's like must have, buyer high priority, or buyer like low priority. And then as soon as we get that in, it comes into Notion. So we have the items all listed out there along with the priorities. And then Kiki, who runs our construction, goes in and she writes next to each one, is it going to be very easy to do, which means like literally someone with a screwdriver and like tighten the screw, because we all know we've gotten things on the inspection reports, or like just tighten the doorknob, right? Yeah. Happy to do that. Is it going to be very easy? Is it going to be easy, or is it going to be hard? And then she also writes the cost next to each thing, what she estimates it's going to cost us to do it. And then when I see that come in, you know, I'm still in charge of like the dispo side. So I go in and there's a column for me, and I say, okay, either yes, I'm going to counter, we're going to do this repair request. That's one option I have. The other option is like, maybe I'll consider it, but it's not my first choice of doing it. So let's just see if they'll take these things first. And then there's things that I just write avoid, right? Like I don't want to I don't want to do, like, that's a crazy request. Like, I'm not going to do that. And that thing to avoid is not just based on the cost. Sometimes we'll do something that is in a high priority to the buyer. It's easy for us, but it's expensive, right? It might be, I don't know, or it's a lender requirement, right? Like an electrical panel needs to be replaced. Okay. It's not really that hard to get an electrical panel replaced, but if you had to rewire a house, that would be a lot harder. Right. So it allows me to see when I go in there what things I want to avoid, what things I want to counter that will do, and what things I would consider if we need a little bit of negotiation room. And I just go in and fill that out, and then I kick it back over to our agent, and I let her handle the negotiation. And now she knows what to counter, and she knows what items I'm really trying to avoid and what items I might consider doing some of them, right? And she can kind of just work with the buyer's agent, figure out, okay, now that we have what we can do, what's actually important to you truly. And there's not really much back and forth anymore. It just allows the agent to be able to handle it, come back to me and be like, this is what I got them to agree to. Are we good? And I either say yes or no. And I just sign the repair request. So
I think that that is one of the parts of what we put into Notion, right? One of the problems that we solved.
That was just 2 weeks ago. Yeah.
So in Notion, initially we had V1, which was a basic transaction communication, and we had some files uploaded, right? And so we've constantly gone back to working with the same Notion programmer, right, over and over again, with him helping us build the big, well, I call them mother databases, but I really don't know I don't know the technical name. And then Isa, who is our graphic designer, who is also the best person organizing everything, actually she has done one Notion course. She loves Notion, like, so much. And she read 2 books about how to make this all work. And so the way she and I have worked for like forever has always been, I'm very good at showing her the vision of what I want to accomplish. And she is really great at helping me bring that to physical reality or to Notion. And so once we had V1 and we started having more needs for Notion to solve more issues, we started building a dashboard that really comprehends so much more than just the property and a chat, right? And within that, we have transactions, right? We have financial, we have the sales reps put in the document. So there's no back and forth, really, hey, here's the documents, and then have someone else do it, right? It's a very easy transition to transactions, from transactions to Kiki, to myself, to you, because there's a whole thread for each thing within Notion. And then we also got rid of Drive for property files. Yeah. Not for the pictures, but for property files. And having that done really is like what has allowed us to like really build it out, you know, where like each section has a view. Yeah. And I think it's important to mention that within Notion, we have the deal board, but we also have these personal dashboards for deals, depending on our role. And so we get things assigned depending on our role and what we have to do. So you don't have to scroll through a ton of deals and click on each one. You could just go into your profile and look at what issues or what tasks you have to do or what you have to fill in. Yeah. And I think that's super powerful because...
Well, the idea is that everyone only, on their personal view, everyone only has what's important to them, what they need to make a decision. Because there's probably 60 different fields in each property, 20 different files, but me as a sales manager only needs to see like 4 fields.
Mm-hmm.
and,
And the
and
sales
issues and
reps,
tasks.
yeah, and the sales reps, they only, when they're putting in a property that's under contract, they only need to upload 4 files.
Yep.
And then not worry about it
Mm-hmm.
ever again until there's an issue that maybe requires them. But if there's no issue, they never have to go back to Notion for anything.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's been amazing.
Yeah.
That's a real game changer.
I think another problem we solved with it was, when we get offers on our stuff that's on the market,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like our realtor just used to send me an email and she would summarize the offer and stuff like that, but everything kind of you just kind of lose track of stuff. Like I would get back to her, but so what we developed is now when we get a new offer, she goes in there, clicks the submit an offer button, puts the property, so it links to the property. Now that offer appears in the property. And she puts in all the important stuff, like what type of financing, how long their inspection period is, all that. And this is a big thing that saved me a bunch of time, is I have her put in there what her suggested counteroffer is.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as that comes in, so now I'm quicker about getting back to her. I get a notification on my phone through the Notion app, and I just open it up and I can see the property. I can see all the other offers we've gotten. And I can go through, I can see the important parts. So I don't actually have to read the 10-page contract or skim through it. And usually it will just say suggested counter, and I'll either just say I approve of your suggested counter, or I'll comment, say, change the suggested counter to this, and then she just lets me know what the result is from there. And under each offer, there's actually an individual comment thread.
Right.
So that we can just talk about just that offer. It doesn't jumble up the rest of it. So it makes it really easy for me to just be able to, like, one click, just decide what to do on a property.
Right. I think it really also makes it very easy for, like, Kiki and repositions, where, like, she's able to see what wants repaired. Or, like, well, a realtor will say, hey, this is, after Mike has said, this is what I'm willing to do, she's like, this is what we officially need. And there's actually a space for her to add a due date. So we know, because sometimes doing these things depends on the importance of, like, is it for lending? Is it not for lending? Depending on what that is. And that will make us prioritize doing it sooner or not.
Yeah.
And so her having a due date there for Kiki allows Kiki to prioritize what we're doing when. And really, if it's something that should be done in like 3 weeks, then she can really manage our contractors to have like a schedule. And they have scheduled things for like a ton of time. Also, it has been a space for Kiki to leave updates on where we're standing in the renovations. Or notes for herself or contacts. So I think that's really great. The other thing that we recently implemented is the handoff from repositions to the realtor. So a lot of times what would happen is that we would send an email to the realtor saying, hey, so here are the pictures and we just renovated this property.
Yeah, tell us what the price is at.
Tell us what the yeah, that's us. And then I think I started realizing that the realtor needed some information. So I would give her like maybe 3 or 4 things. Like, we changed the floors, like whatever. And then Kiki took it to another level. Again, this is people taking us to another level. She's like, okay, so we actually would need to give the realtor 20 pieces of information of everything we did, and that's going to stop the back and forth.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, okay, because she was sending, there was a lot of questions like, when was the pump done? when was the last time you guys reviewed this and this and that? And many times we had already done it.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's so many properties that sometimes you forget. You're like, oh, did we do that? Did we not? You're looking for the receipt, whatever that is.
Mm-hmm.
So Kiki built a table where she now puts HVAC.
Mm-hmm.
Is it sewer? Is it not sewer? When was the last time it was serviced?
Yeah.
Is it new? What's the state? And that just allows a realtor to take all of that, post it,
Mm-hmm.
and not only that, but also build herself up with oh, these are the most common questions. I already have the answers.
Yeah. Well, it stops a lot of the questions that we would get, which is 3 days into the listing, there's probably 10, 20 questions that other agents always ask. And we used to have to answer those one off, and now we don't have to answer them at all.
Right.
Which is huge.
Yeah. We've also just implemented having an information sheet that we're leaving behind in the properties.
Yeah.
That answers a lot of those questions.
I think a good point to bring up too is that because we have this deal board now, and everyone knows the market's harder now than it was 2 years ago, unfortunately. But harder to sell, let me put it that way, not harder to buy. What we're doing now is our realtor can see which properties that we have that are under either post occupancy or renovation, and we are now. Sometimes we have properties that are we have a couple going in Hastings right now. So we had one that we're selling this week. We have another one that'll be done with renovation in 6 weeks. So now we've had some buyers on that, and we've had some buyers call from we put a sign outside when we buy a place that's saying we bought it, call us if we want to sell yours. But a lot of buyers call that. And now our realtor has the info on what other properties we have coming up. So even though that property on Amos Avenue is sold, we have one coming up on Kircher in 6 weeks, and she's already reaching out to the buyers who either missed out on Amos or maybe called one of the signs and saying, hey, yeah, that property's already gone. We usually sell ours pretty quick, but we have another one that I can get you in to be the first person to see when we go live with it. So we're trying to really I don't want to say pre-sell because it's not quite pre-selling, but it's at least get a few buyers interested before it hits the market. So the first weekend we do the open house, we can get those people out there.
I think what she's also trying to accomplish is really seeing, oh, okay, so the buyers from this property, what are they looking for? Mm-hmm. And so, for example, for Amos, right, a couple of buyers were looking for the land. Mm-hmm. Right. So the space within the house wasn't really what they were looking for. They were looking for 2 acres or whatever they were looking for. Yeah. Right. So then she's able to see and be like, oh, this fits your criteria. Yeah. This is why you should consider it. Mm-hmm. This is what's coming up. That is tied to their needs or their wants.
Yeah. Plus, everyone wants the first shot at a deal, right? It's more exciting if no one else has seen it yet, and you get the personal invite that it's going to be hitting the market.
Right.
So I think that's big. I think maybe just one last thing to cover because this thing says we're running out of recording time.
Okay.
One big thing we were working on the sales side. Hopefully, this will be done within about a week. We've had a version of this that's been very manual before, but it's going to be fully automated, which is. Anyone here who has any sales reps know that it is not sales rep superpower generally to add notes and update the CRM, right? That can be kind of a problem. Mm-hmm. But it's important, right? Because you're trying to manage hundreds of leads. You're trying to make sure you get in touch with the right people at the right time. But sales reps' time is best spent talking to people.
Right.
So we had developed before a way where we could transcribe calls, but it was kind of a manual process. We would transcribe them using a tool, and then our sales operations assistant had built a ChatGPT bot to put the notes in a standard format. Mm-hmm. And we've been trying to figure out a way, how can we not have to download every call, upload it, take it, copy and paste the notes to the CRM, right? It's a lot of work. So I was able to connect with a developer for Go High Level, which we use as our CRM. And I'm actually trying to meet with him tomorrow to hopefully finalize everything. And He's said that he's going to be able to automatically take that call recording once that call is done, no matter what source it came from, because we log them all in the CRM, even if they came from CallRail or something. He's going to send that to a transcription service on the back end, have it put in our standard format, automatically put it back in the CRM.
So read it, take notes.
It's gonna read the transcription, run it through like a ChatGPT bot, or we might use Google's Gemini, spit out the notes in the standard format, and those notes will be put in the CRM. And then actually he's working on something that we're going to try, which he's actually going to see if, based on those notes, he's going to be able to update some of the fields even in the CRM. The custom fields. So things like sell date, so it automatically moves a person to hot as that date gets closer, or
motivation.
Pain, right? Pain or motivation. Why an appointment wasn't booked, what the next agreed upon step with the sales rep is. So we're trying to automate getting as many of those fields filled out as possible, because my goal is for sales reps to sell. And if sales reps can just sell and they don't have to do admin work, they can easily stay within their superpower, but they can also have 30 conversations a day instead of 20 conversations a day, because they don't have to add any notes. They don't have to update any CRM fields. I don't know if it'll be quite perfect yet, but I think we're going to get about 80 or 90% of the way there. So pretty excited about that.
Yeah. I think
if anyone wants it, it'll be $10,000 a month. Just reach out to me. I'm kidding. I'll tell people, a developer, if they want it, reach out to me.
I think before finishing, it's important to say where this is actually one of our team members' rocks. This is Alejandro's rock. And I think it's important to share where the rock comes from. Talking about superpowers, we used to have our quarterly meetings and think so much about what we could do to bring traction, but we wouldn't ask ourselves what we could do to bring traction that was within our superpowers.
Yeah.
And that really created, I want to say, it slowed us down. And what we've been doing for the past quarterly meetings is, and actually for our BOS meeting or L10 meeting weekly, is asking ourselves, okay, so this is the problem, the opportunity, the issue, or where we want to be. Let's all brainstorm ideas and see, it doesn't matter if those ideas are within your superpowers or not. And we'll just brainstorm. And then have everyone then think about, okay, from all of the ideas, what is within your superpowers that you can help us and that could bring so much traction. And so what we came up with this quarter was hiring. And so one of, hiring sales reps, hiring a marketing director, and so Alejandra didn't really know exactly what her rock was going to be.
Well, what was our overall goal for the quarter? I think it's important to know.
Oh, okay. Our overall goal for the quarter is to hire 4 10X team members. Yes. So, people that would 10X the company.
Yeah.
And so the roles that I mentioned are roles that we thought would definitely 10X us. But she was like, I don't know what I could do to 10X. Hire. Who would I hire? How would I impact?
Yeah.
And kind of the question was what have we not considered that you could do? And we came up with, okay, well, you could 10X yourself.
I think she came up with that herself, actually.
Yes.
She said, I want to create this AI integration with the CRM so that I can become a 10X hire.
Right.
So you can get a 10X hire without even making a 10X hire.
Right. Which, funny enough, Isa had created a rock for herself.
Mm-hmm.
And then maybe a week or two after, I said, I don't think that's the right rock.
Mm-hmm.
You don't seem convinced.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, she wasn't really, like, clicking with it.
Mm-hmm.
And so she goes, like, well, what do you suggest? And so I told her, like, you should just think about it, like, more. Like, what have you not considered yet?
Mm-hmm.
And so she came up with, she works with Mariana cutting up the content from the podcast and, like, any other things that we're recording. And there was a lot of back and forth between her and Mariana, right? But Isa has other responsibilities. And so she's like, oh, I'm just going to build an AI bot.
Yeah.
And she did. And she built an AI bot for the podcast.
Yeah.
And she's like taught it like all these amazing things. And so now Mariana needs less of her input.
Mm-hmm.
And she's just like rolling with it, which freed up Isa's time. I think that's something really cool that, you know, we've been doing and implementing in multiple areas in the company.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Anything else we want to talk about?
No. Just, I want to hear what people think about. The local recording, but
we're still live?
Yeah.
Okay.
I want to hear what people think about the podcast. And if you guys have any suggestions on like things that you would like us to talk about, I mean, we're happy to.
Yeah. All right.
Oh, one more thing. We are hiring lead managers now.
Yeah. We're hiring remote inside sales reps. So, which in other words, people who are going to call our leads and, book appointments for our sales reps locally. So we're going to be hiring nationally in the US and internationally. So that job post is probably going to go up by tomorrow. Mm-hmm. So if anyone's interested in that kind of role, we still are also hiring local sales reps. So if you're interested in that, just go to unloadmyhome.com/hiring and you'll have all the details there of what we're offering for that position.
Yeah. If you're interested or you know of anyone.
Yeah.
Also, if you're interested in working with us, but it's not a sales position, I would just reach out to either, I'll actually say me, to my Facebook, and I'd be free to, happy to talk to you guys, depending on what you would like to do within the company. Cool. We're always looking for amazing people.
Yeah, and vendors.
And vendors, yes.
All right, everyone. Thanks for joining.